I need to tell you what happened to me last week before I lose the ability to speak. Before my jaw stops working the way it should, you need to understand why I did what I did, and why you should never, ever listen if you hear it too. The power went out on a Tuesday night. Nothing unusual about that. We'd been getting hammered by freezing rain for 3 days straight, and half the city was dark. I lived alone in a converted warehouse loft on the east side. The kind of place that looks industrial chic in photos but feels hollow and exposed when you're actually living in it. Concrete floors, exposed ductwork, windows too high to reach. The heating system made sounds like someone dragging chains through the walls. But the rent was cheap, and I'd learned to ignore it. I was sitting on my couch with a battery-powered lantern when the lights died. The refrigerator's hum cut off mid-note. The building settled into a silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat pulsing in my ears. Outside, the freezing rain tapped against the windows like fingernails, patient and rhythmic. That's when I heard it. A voice, coming from somewhere behind the north wall of my apartment. It was speaking a number. Just one word, drawn out and deliberate, like someone savoring the taste of it. 1. I sat perfectly still listening. The voice was neither male nor female. It had a wet quality to it, like someone speaking with a mouthful of something thick. The acoustics made it impossible to pinpoint exactly where it was coming from. The walls in these old buildings are brick and plaster, riddled with gaps and hollow spaces where the original framework still exists. I waited, nothing. I got up and pressed my ear against the wall, feeling the cold plaster against my cheek. I knocked twice. The sound echoed dully. I knocked again, harder, and called out. Hello, is someone there? Silence answered me. Just the rain outside and my own breathing. I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor's television. Maybe pipes settling. Maybe my own exhaustion playing tricks on me. I'd been working 70-hour weeks, trying to meet a deadline for my job in database administration. My eyes ached. My head throbbed with the kind of tension headache that makes your teeth hurt. I went back to the couch and tried to read by lantern light, but the words on the page refused to arrange themselves into meaning. I kept glancing at the wall, waiting. 20 minutes passed, then I heard it again. 2. The same voice. The same wet, deliberate pronunciation. This time I didn't move. I sat frozen, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. My rational mind scrambled for explanations. A recording. A prank. Someone trapped in the walls. I thought about the building's history. It had been a textile factory once, then a meth lab, then condemned for 15 years, before developers bought it and carved it into overpriced living spaces. Who knew what was still hidden in its bones? I grabbed my phone. No signal. The storm had taken out the cell towers too. I was completely isolated. I stood up slowly and approached the wall again. This time I pressed both palms flat against it, feeling for vibrations, for any indication of movement or machinery. The plaster was ice cold. I waited there for 5 minutes, barely breathing, listening with every fiber of my being. Nothing happened. I backed away and sat down. My mouth had gone dry. I took a sip of water from a bottle on the coffee table, and the liquid felt strange going down my throat. Too thick somehow, like I had to force it past some obstruction. 10 minutes later, the voice spoke again. 3. This time something else happened. My left incisor loosened in its socket. Not violently, not painfully, just a subtle shift, like the root had suddenly decided it no longer needed to hold on quite so tightly. I touched my tongue to it and felt it move slightly, wobbling in the gum. Fear bloomed in my chest, cold and sharp. I stood up and paced the apartment, trying to convince myself this was coincidence. Stress. I'd been grinding my teeth at night for months. My dentist had warned me about it. This was just bad timing. The voice and my tooth had nothing to do with each other. But I knew, somewhere deep in the primitive part of my brain that still remembers when humans were prey, I knew. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror by candlelight. My reflection looked haggard, dark circles under my eyes, skin pale and slick with cold sweat. I opened my mouth and prodded the loose tooth with my finger. It shifted back and forth with a grinding sensation that made my stomach turn. I stayed in the bathroom for half an hour, door closed, sitting on the edge of the bathtub with my head in my hands. Maybe if I couldn't hear the voice, it wouldn't continue. Maybe this would all stop if I just waited it out. 4. The voice came through clearly even here, penetrating the walls like they were paper. And immediately, I felt something in my right eye change. Not pain, but a sensation of pressure building behind the eyeball, like someone was slowly inflating a balloon inside my skull. I stumbled to the mirror. The white of my right eye was filling with blood, a hemorrhage spreading from the corner, creeping across the sclera in dark crimson tendrils. As I watched, it bloomed water, obscuring the white entirely. My vision in that eye didn't go dark, but everything took on a reddish tint, like looking through tinted glass. I wanted to scream, but my throat had locked up. I gripped the sink edge so hard, my knuckles turned white. This was real. This was happening. Something was counting, and every number it spoke was destroying a piece of my body. I lurched out of the bathroom and grabbed my keys. I had to leave. I had to get out of this apartment, away from whatever was in the walls. But when I reached the front door and turned the deadbolt, it wouldn't budge. The lock mechanism felt frozen, seized up completely. I yanked on the handle with all my strength. Nothing. The door was solid steel, installed by the previous tenant who had been paranoid about break-ins. No amount of force was going to open it if the lock had failed. I ran to the windows, but they were 15 feet off the ground, old factory installations with thick wire-reinforced glass. I grabbed a chair and hurled it at the nearest window. The chair bounced off with a hollow thud, leaving not even a scratch. I tried again. Same result. I was trapped. 5. My right knee buckled. I heard a wet pop as something inside the joint gave way, and I collapsed to the floor screaming. The kneecap had dislocated, sliding to the side, and the ligaments built like they were tearing. Hot pain radiated up and down my leg in waves. I writhed on the cold concrete, clutching my knee, tears streaming down my face. Through the pain, my mind raced. The voice was counting upward. Each number was triggering something in my body. If it reached 6, something else would fail. 7, another. How high would it go? When would it stop? I lay there panting, staring at the ceiling, and I realized something. The gaps between numbers weren't consistent. The voice had gone from 1 to 2 in about 20 minutes, 2 to 3 in 10, 34 in less time, 4 to 5 even faster. It was exhilarating. I dragged myself across the floor, leaving a smear of blood from where I'd bitten my tongue. My knee was useless, hanging at a wrong angle. I pulled myself up onto the couch and tried to think through the pain. There had to be a pattern. There had to be a reason. Why was this happening? What did it want? And then without meaning to, I looked down at my hand, at the chair leg, at the blood on my lips. The counting had paused. It had been at least 5 minutes since the voice said 5. Normally by now, it would have continued. But it hadn't. A terrible understanding crept over me. When I hurt myself throwing the chair, when I fell and injured my knee, the counting had slowed, as if it was waiting, as if my pain had somehow interrupted its rhythm. I tested the theory without fully accepting what I was doing. I pressed my thumb hard against the dislocated kneecap, sending fresh agony shooting through my nervous system. I held it there, breathing through my teeth, counting seconds in my head. 1 minute passed, 2, 3. The voice stayed silent. I released the pressure, gasping and started counting down in my head. 30 seconds, 20, 10, ticks. My stomach cramped violently, like someone had reached inside and twisted my intestines into a knot. I doubled over, retching, and a thin stream of bile spilled onto the floor. The cramping continued, wave after wave, and I could feel something moving wrong inside me. Organs shifting position like they were trying to reorganize themselves. But I understood now. The voice counted when I wasn't in pain. It stopped when I was. I was being given a choice: hurt myself or let the counting continue until it destroyed me completely. With shaking hands, I reached for the lantern. The metal base was heavy, solid. I looked at my left hand, at the fingers splayed against my thigh. I thought about what I was about to do. I thought about what would happen if I didn't. I raised the lantern and brought it down hard on my index finger. The bone broke with a sound like a green twig snapping. White-hot pain exploded through my hand and up my arm. I screamed, a raw animal sound that echoed off the concrete walls. The finger bent at an impossible angle, the bone jutting beneath the skin. I sat there cradling my hand, sobbing, waiting. 1 minute, 2, 5, 10. The voice stayed silent. I had bought myself time, but I knew it would start again, and when it did, I would have to hurt myself again and again till I ran out of things to break, or until I passed out, or until I died from the injuries I was inflicting. The storm continued outside indifferent. The rain hammered against the windows. The darkness pressed in from all sides, and I sat alone in my apartment, broken finger throbbing, knee dislocated, eye hemorrhaging, tooth loose, waiting for a voice in the walls to count to 7. I tried to think. I tried to plan, but the pain made it hard to focus on anything except the immediate animal need to survive the next few minutes. I looked around the apartment for anything that might help. My phone was useless, the door was sealed, the windows unbreakable. I was alone with the voice and my own capacity for self-destruction. 15 minutes after I broke my finger, I heard it again. 7. This time the pain hit my spine. A sharp, grinding sensation between my shoulder blades, like vertebrae scraping against each other. My back arched involuntarily, and I fell off the couch, landing hard on my broken knee. Fresh agony bloomed through my leg. I couldn't straighten my spine. Something had locked up, frozen in place. I crawled to the kitchen area, dragging my useless leg behind me. I needed a knife, anything sharp. I pulled open a drawer with my good hand and grabbed a paring knife. The blade was short but sharp enough. I pressed the tip against my forearm, right above the wrist. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. I thought about what I was doing. I thought about infection, about blood loss, about how insane this was. Then I thought about the voice reaching 8, 9, 10, 20. I pushed the blade into my skin. The pain was different from breaking the finger, sharper, more immediate. Blood welled up dark and thick, running down my arm in hot rivulets. I gasped but kept the blade in place, drawing it slowly across my skin. A 2-inch cut, deep enough to hurt, shallow enough not to sever anything vital. The blood dripped onto the concrete floor in a steady rhythm. Drip. I waited. The voice stayed silent. I wrapped my arm in a dish towel, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. The cloth slowed through quickly, turning from white to deep red. I tied it tight with my teeth and my good hand, creating a crude bandage. Then I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, and tried to accept what was happening to me. I was mutilating myself to stop a voice in the walls from counting. With each number, my body was being systematically destroyed. The only way to delay it was through pain, self-inflicted pain. How long could I keep this up? How many times could I hurt myself before I went into shock? Before I bled out? Before my body simply gave up? I looked at my trembling hands. 9 fingers left intact, 2 legs though one was damaged, 2 eyes though one was full of blood. How much of me would be left when this ended? If it ended. The thought crept in slowly, like cold water rising. What if it never stopped? What if the voice counted forever and I had to keep hurting myself forever? Trapped in this cycle until I died from accumulated injuries, I pushed the thought away. I had to believe there was an endpoint, a final number. I just had to survive until the voice reached it. But what if the final number was 100, 1,000? The rain outside had turned to sleet. I could hear it pinging against the windows like thrown gravel. The temperature in the apartment had dropped. My breath came out in visible puffs. I was shivering, whether from cold or shock, I couldn't tell. 10 minutes passed. I watched the second hand on the battery-powered clock above the sink, counting down to the inevitable 8. My right shoulder dislocated. The ball joint slipped out of its socket with a sensation of tearing, and my arm hung limp and useless. I screamed through gritted teeth, cradling the dead arm against my chest. I didn't have time to process the pain. I had to hurt myself again, quickly. Before the voice continued, I looked down at my left foot, at the toes, at the delicate bones that ran through them. I grabbed the paring knife from where I'd dropped it and slammed the handle down on my little toe as hard as I could. The bone shattered. I felt it collapse like a crushed insect under the impact. The pain was instant and overwhelming, but I held the pressure, grinding the broken pieces together, keeping the agony fresh and sharp. 1 minute, 2, 5. The voice stayed silent. I was learning the rules. Pain bought time. The worse the pain, the more time I bought. But the pain had to be sustained. If I let it fade to a dull ache, the counting would resume. I sat there with my broken toe throbbing, my shoulder hanging useless, my knee twisted wrong, blood still seeping through the towel on my arm. And I thought about the person I had been 4 hours ago, the person who had worried about work deadlines and bills, and whether his hair was thinning. That person was gone. In his place was this, a creature in survival mode, willing to destroy itself piece by piece to delay the inevitable. The storm intensified. The building creaked and groaned. Somewhere far away I heard what might have been sirens, or might have been the wind. No one was coming. No one knew I was here. No one would hear me scream. I don't know how much time passed. Minutes blurred together. The pain became a constant presence, a background noise I tried to tune out. But every time it started to fade, every time my body began to numb itself against the injuries, I heard it. 9. My jaw locked shut. The muscles seized up, clenching with impossible force. I felt my remaining good teeth crack under the pressure, enamel splitting. Blood filled my mouth as my tongue got caught between molars. The pain was indescribable. I couldn't open my mouth, couldn't breathe through it. I had to force air through my nose in short, panicked gasps. I grabbed the knife again with my good hand and drove it into my thigh. The blade sank in deep, maybe 2 inches, hitting muscle. I twisted it, keeping the pain sharp, keeping it present. Blood soaked through my jeans immediately, warm and sticky. The voice stopped, but it was counting faster now, much faster. The gap between 9 and the next number would be shorter, maybe only a few minutes, maybe less. I was running out of body, running out of things I could safely damage without dying. My left hand still worked, my left leg was intact, my left eye was fine, but everything else was broken or bleeding or both. And I realized with creeping horror that I was going to have to make choices, strategic choices about which parts of me I could afford to lose. I could break my left hand, crush the fingers one by one. That would buy time. But then I'd have no functioning hands, no way to hold the knife, no way to inflict new pain when the counting resumed. I could stab myself again, deeper, but too deep, and I'd hit something vital, an artery. an organ. I'd bleed out in minutes. I was trapped in a calculus of suffering, trying to balance present agony against future survival, and I was losing. The clock showed it had been 3 minutes since 9. I stared at the wall where the voice came from, hatred burning in my chest. What was this thing? Why was it doing this? What did it want? And then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Laughter, soft and wet, coming from the same place as the voice. A bubbling, gurgling sound like someone drowning in their own fluids. It laughed and laughed, the sound echoing through the walls, and I understood. It was enjoying this. This was entertainment. A game. I was a toy being slowly taken apart by something that found my suffering amusing. The laughter faded, silence, and then, faster than before, barely 2 minutes after 9, 10, my left eye ruptured. I felt it collapse inward, the vitreous fluid bursting through the sclera. Vision in that eye went completely dark, replaced by a searing pain that felt like a hot wire pushed through my skull. I couldn't see. Both eyes were useless now, one hemorrhaged and one destroyed. I was blind and broken and bleeding, alone in the dark. Panic seized me. I lashed out wildly with the knife, stabbing myself in the side, in the ribs, anywhere I could reach. The pain was immense but distant, like it was happening to someone else. I twisted the blade, carved into my own flesh, felt hot blood pour down my side. The voice stopped, but I knew it wouldn't last. It was counting faster and faster. The next number would come in a minute, maybe less, and then another, and another, and another, until it reached the end. Whatever the end was, I lay on the floor, unable to see, barely able to breathe, every part of me screaming in agony. The knife had fallen from my hand. I groped blindly for it, fingers brushing concrete, feeling only cold floor and warm blood. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep hurting myself. I couldn't survive this. But the alternative was letting the voice continue, letting it count to whatever final number it had chosen. And I knew, somehow, that number would be the end of me. Not just pain, not just injury, complete annihilation. My searching fingers found the knife handle. I gripped it weakly. Less than a minute had passed. 11. My spine curved backward. I heard the vertebrae cracking, bending wrong, and suddenly I couldn't feel my legs at all. The nerves had severed. Paralysis spread through my lower body like ice water. I was still in agony everywhere else, but my legs had gone completely numb, dead weight attached to a dying body. I stabbed the knife into my chest, just above the sternum. Not deep, just enough. The pain burst through me like electricity. I held it there, feeling the blade grate against bone. The voice stopped. 30 seconds later, 12. My good hand cramped. The fingers curled inward like a claw, bones breaking as the muscles contracted beyond their limits. The knife fell away. I had no way to hold it anymore, no way to hurt myself, no way to stop what was coming. 20 seconds later, 13. My left lung collapsed. I felt it deflate, the air rushing out, and suddenly I could only breathe with half my capacity. Each breath was a shallow, desperate gasp. Darkness crept in at the edges of my consciousness. I was suffocating slowly from the inside. 15 seconds, 14. My intestines twisted. I felt them knotting together, looping around each other like tangled rope. The pain was beyond anything I'd experienced. I tried to scream but couldn't get enough air. Blood poured from my mouth. 10 seconds, 15. My remaining good ear went deaf. The world fell silent except for the sound of my own body failing. No rain, no wind, just the wet internal sounds of organs rupturing. 5 seconds, 16. My heart stuttered, skipped beats. The rhythm went chaotic, fluttering uselessly in my chest. I was finally dying, and then the voice changed. It spoke faster now, rapid fire, the numbers tumbling over each other in a wet, eager rush. 17, 18, 19, 20. With each number, something new broke. Ribs snapped inward, puncturing organs. My pelvis cracked. My skull began to compress. Blood vessels burst throughout my body. I was being crushed from the inside out, folded in on myself like paper. 21, 22, 23. I couldn't think anymore. Couldn't form coherent thoughts. There was only pain and the certainty of ending. My body was collapsing, imploding, everything structural giving way at once. Through the haze, I felt myself being compressed, bones piercing through skin, organs bursting, my rib cage folding inward like a crushed can, my spine curving into impossible shapes. I was becoming something smaller, denser, compacted into a space my body was never meant to occupy. The last thing I felt before consciousness left me was my skull cracking. The sound echoed inside my head like distant thunder. And then nothing, nothing, nothing. And then I heard it, soft, patient, darting over. One. But I wasn't hearing it with my ears. I was hearing it from inside, from some part of me that remained aware even though my body was destroyed. The voice was in me now, part of me, growing louder, and I understood the final horror. It wasn't done. It would never be done. It would count again, in me, inside whatever remained. And when someone found what was left, when someone touched the twisted remains, it would pass to them. The voice would start counting in their walls, and they would hurt themselves trying to stop it, and they would fail, and it would fold them up too, and pass to the next person, and the next. Forever, I'm still here, still aware, trapped in what's left of my body, compressed into something the size of the basketball. All my pieces pushed together wrong. I can't move, can't speak, can't warn anyone, but I can hear. And right now, somewhere beyond the crushed remnants of my vision, I hear footsteps, heavy boots, a door being forced open, voices calling out. Emergency responders probably, called by a neighbor who heard something. Or maybe the landlord checking on unpaid rent. They're coming closer. They're going to find me. And when they touch what I've become, when they recoil in horror at the impossible thing on the floor, it will start. They'll hear it. One. And somewhere in the walls of their home, it will begin counting. And they'll try to stop it. They'll break themselves trying. They'll fail, just like I did. The footsteps are right outside now. I hear someone say, Jesus Christ. I hear someone else vomiting. They've seen me. They're staring at what I've become. And in the silence that follows, I hear it. The voice, starting fresh, starting over, patient and wet and eager. One. I would scream if I could. I would warn them if I had a mouth left. But all I can do is wait. Wait for them to experience what I experienced. Wait for the voice to count them into nothing. Wait for it to spread. It's already too late. The counting has begun.